I'm going to tell you about a ton of free sound effects, music loops, and music beds that you can download from Adobe and use inside Audition CS6. And if you want to follow along, you can't, because look what we're looking at here. Does this interface look different? It is different. It's Audition CS 5.5, the previous version of Audition. I'm showing it to you because it has a feature that is not in Audition CS6. That feature is called Resource Central. You won't find Resource Central inside Audition CS6, and I'm glad, because it was darn hard to use. It was tedious to use. It was one of those well-intended good ideas that just did not pay off, and I'm glad that Adobe let it die a quiet death. But here we are back in CS 5.5. I want to explain what you could get back then and how it's going to be different in CS6. Back then, you would go to Resource Central and you could download all these sound effects, loops, and music beds, and you would access them one at a time by going through a drop-down menu, picking a category, and inside the category you would preview them like this guy here. Let's listen to this. Very cool. Great sound effects. Tons of great sound effects. And if you liked it, you would then click this little download button and download that file. You could go through hundreds of files. Notice that under weather there are 72 results on 8 pages, so you'd have to page through things to try to figure out which ones you liked and listen to them one at a time. Tedious as heck. Let's go on down to music loops. Now, if you don't know what a loop is, it's just a brief music snippet. These loops are recorded by real live musicians using real instruments as opposed to some electronic gizmos, and they sound great. Just take a listen to this one here. And that's it, one little snippet. Now, these loops were recorded years ago. In its previous life, Audition was called Cool Edit Pro. It was owned by a company called Centrillium Software. In 2003, Adobe bought out the technology assets of Centrillium, including Cool Edit Pro. And in late 2003, after they had put an Adobe interface on it, they released Audition 1. And with Audition 1 came all of these Cool Edit Pro loops. There were files that had CEL extensions. And these files were made by musicians back in the Centrillium days. Thousands of little files, and it was just a really great feature of Audition. And so those files are still available. They're not called CEL files anymore, they're WAV files, so they're much more compatible. And you can use them inside Audition, except the technology that was associated with them was called loopology, and that technology no longer works inside Audition. It was dropped from the previous version of Audition, Audition 4, when they ported it to Macs. So that's gone. The loopology technology is gone. You used to be able to take a loop, change its key, change its tempo, and it would sound great no matter how you changed it. Well, that thing is gone, but you can still do that pretty well inside the current version of Audition. It just doesn't have that little loopology feature. Let me just talk about music beds and then we'll move on here. Music bed is just a collection of instruments playing all at once. We'll just listen to them for a moment. So you could use that as kind of a starting point, as a bed, and you could add those individual loops on top of that. So that's the way it all worked. It doesn't quite work that way anymore, but let me show you how things have changed. I'm going to go to the current version of Audition. Now, this is the thing we're going to work on in the next tutorial, so it's all set up for that, but I do want to show you kind of how things look when you've added loops to a multi-track session. They don't come in as loops, they're just little snippets, little WAV files, and when you put them in, then you go over to the properties and turn them into a loop. If I click on one of these guys, you've seen this before, you can then turn these guys into a loop by going to basic settings and just click on the loop box. So yes, they are not using the loopology technology, but you just convert them to loops and then you can stretch them, you can change their pitch and things like that. But it's not as easy to use as it once was. Nevertheless, how do you get the loops now? If there's no more Resource Central, where do you go? Well, when I did this tutorial, they had not set up the website to download loops yet. But the way you're going to access it is through the help file. And here is the menu command that will probably be the same when you get the shipping version of Audition CS6. It might be a little different, but you'll be able to tell from what it says that this is the way you get those music loops and those sound effects. And when you go there, you're probably going to go to a website that looks something like this. This is the website that was used to download what they called loopology content. This is from versions 1, 2, and 3 of Audition. You can see that the files are grouped by type, sort of the way they were in Resource Central, but here there's just one big chunk of files that you download as a zip file unzip it, then all those files are available for you. You don't have to kind of go through one at a time, click and listen, click and listen. You can bring a whole bunch of them into Audition and just run through them really quickly, and it's much, much easier this way. Now, if you go to this website, you're not really going to be able to use these because these are the old CEL file formats and they won't work inside Audition. I'm going to explain how to use loops in the next tutorial.